will start with introducing myself. My name is Lacey Picazo. I'm going to be your co-host this morning. I'm the principal of ZoCo Design. We're a digital product and experience design studio. And my co-host, Andrew.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Bromwell. As Lacey mentioned, we're from ZoCo. I'm the creative director here, actively looking at our process and figuring out better ways to serve our clients and their customers' needs. I'm excited to be here with you guys today and talk with our guest.
Absolutely. So as I said, we are our co-hosts for this spring's Products for People talk show. Our focuses on the show are going to be around how the problems of people inspire great products, how understanding the human experience informs and improves the future of technology. So I see some friendly faces. If you know Andrew and I, it's probably not a shock that we're going to be putting a spotlight on amazing practitioners of human-centered design throughout this series. That's totally our jam, but these people aren't necessarily designers. We've been joined this season by innovators, by change makers, by data scientists, and by educators. All people, though, who are marrying human insights with their ambitions for technology to solve for the common good and create a better future. So today we're going to be joined by our friends at data leaders in innovation, insurance, and services. But as a note, this is coming close to the end of TechLife Live season. Products for People actually isn't going to stop this spring. Andrew and I are working on some content to roll out this summer and keep things going before Ben brings us all back for more TechLife Live in the fall. So I'm actually going to share a form in the chat. Speaking of sharing your data, if you'd like to share your data with me, your email address, if you would like any updates in the future on when we're rolling out new content. If you want to hear more from these speakers, please sign up there. Awesome.
All right, so today, as Lacey mentioned, we're human-centered designers and thinkers and practitioners. We're always hunting for insights and information that'll fuel our decision-making, providing us more objective rationalization to often subjective deliverables. Data, the collection of it and how we use it has become an integral part of human-centered design. And when we use it right, it can improve customer experiences, it can build deeper connections with our users, and it can shift thinking across organizations and industries. And in the most science fiction-y cases, I think it can create futures that we never dreamed possible until now. So today we've invited 3 guests with very unique perspectives on data. It's a role in product design and decision making, and as we continuously strive to level up our understanding of data and our abilities of using data within our design, Lacey and I have turned to these gentlemen on more than one occasion for advice and education, and luckily they all agreed today to share some of their perspective with us. So I'd like to go around real quick, maybe 30 to 60 seconds each, and set up some quick intros. So I'm going to start with Tyler. Do you mind kicking us off? Just saying hi, tell us who you are, what organization you're from, and what role you play within that organization.
Absolutely. Hello, I'm Tyler Ransburgh. I'm with Safelite AutoGlass. I'm responsible for digital design and product. And so that entails all of our web experiences, email, we dabble in some of the other digital stuff. I'm super excited to join. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. How about you, Corwin?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm hiding in my son's bedroom from the rest of the family, so I'm trying to keep my head strategically placed to avoid all of the Legos in the background. But Corwin Smith, I work for Nationwide is in advanced analytics. Essentially what I look to do is turn our business problems into analytical solutions and then set the agenda and make sure that we're delivering against those problems using data and AI and machine learning. So I always enjoy speaking with Lacey and Andrew and always learn something every time I speak with them. So I'm looking forward to actually hoping to share something that I might know about other than hiding Legos in the background.
And then Ty.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here with you. So I'm Ty Henkaline, and I'm the lead of the data and insights and engineering teams at Singularity University. And then I also consult a bit on the side. I'm a formally trained applied statistician and behavioral scientist. And I started about 12 years ago in sort of the data science space, kind of as it was emerging. and started out building sort of the internal workings of products in this space, and then went on to teams and then business units, and now kind of serve largely as a lead on building out practices in the data science space.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Super appreciate it. We pick on our friends to get them to come talk to us for hours early in the morning. But before diving in together, some notes on what we want to achieve in this hour. You can at first ask questions in the chat throughout. We're going to take some breaks throughout the show to make sure that we're addressing some of those, but we're going to see them the whole time and try and repivot the conversation to cover what you guys care about. So please feel free to weigh in. We're also going to be doing breakout rooms in the last 10 minutes of the show. So if you'd like to meet some new people, make some connections, ask some questions to your peers, we're going to do that in the last 10 minutes. So I hope you hang out. Also, the point of this is to meet new people. When Ben had this vision for TechLife Live, it came from the amount of amazing networking events he used to put on in real life that we aren't participating in anymore. So if you would like to meet some new folks, leave your name in the chat, reach out to each other on LinkedIn. Feel free to even drop your LinkedIn URL. Part of the purpose of this whole series is to connect people. So seeing lots of good faces who have joined the call. Who are my data masters? Who in here loves data and is excited to be talking about data? Talking to all of you participants. If you want to use a reaction or raise your hand. I love it. We've got some great data faces in there. And who is joining us for their first ever TechLife Live episode this series? Hey, we've got some of you too. Don't be shy. We love all of you. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Well, I think to kick things off, I'm going to send my first question to Ty. And, we'll be going back and forth between Ty and Tyler. So we'll have to make sure that I don't slip up here. But to Ty, I would love to hear. So could you start by telling us why data is important to improving the experiences of people? I know your work really well, and I know how you ingrain data in the product work that you promote and that's the work that you support. But I would love for everybody to hear a little bit more about your perspectives there.
Sure, that's a big meaty question with a lot of scope. So hopefully I can find a little piece of it to at least pick off and share some thoughts on. Yeah, I mean, for me, especially working in this space, I enjoy very much following along with companies, teams, products that use data and machine learning well. And I think in particular, just to grab one arbitrary example of a leader in that space, Google in particular is especially good at designing with machine learning in mind. I just got a Pixel phone, and I used to be on iPhones. And, along the way, as Google has sort of grown up, I've enjoyed following along with how they've integrated data and machine learning into the design of the products, right? Where, it's no longer about designing a product and then figuring out how to use data. It is designing a product from the beginning to take advantage of machine learning. And if anyone's used a Google phone lately, you see this everywhere, right? They're constantly asking you to give them input so that you can clearly see this as you use their products so that they can train their machine learning behind the scenes to offer up very highly personalized and intelligent experiences. So for me, that's one of the most exciting things at a very macro level, for me to follow along with, just to see how sort of the best are doing it.
That's great. I think Google's, an interesting example. They have an insane amount of data. And we also often run into times where we need data and it's not there. Corwin, I wonder if, from your perspective, we often run into this challenge of where do we start? Where do we start if we have too much? Where do we start if we don't have enough? Just wondering what you can share, what insights you can provide.
Sure. The biggest thing to start is to just start, right? You're going to find your path along your way. You're never going to have the perfect data set. You're never going to have the perfect problem statement, but you're going to refine that over time. And the more you get into those things, the more you're going to be able to become more comfortable the next time when you're trying to turn that business problem into an analytical solution. Personally, one of the things that I think is easiest to start is taking the blend of the data and the analytic side of things, and where does that intersect with an experience? So I could have the world's greatest model and I could predict the most amazing things ever, but if I don't ever integrate that model into a business process or a customer experience, there's no value that anyone's going to be deriving from that model. And so where are those pain points across that experience that you're balancing that quantitative and qualitative side, that aspect? So where are those problems that you guys are identifying from the qualitative perspective, and then start to go out and look at where you can find some of the data to better inform what's going on there, not just from a qualitative aspect, but from that quantitative perspective. Now, I don't have the same statistical background as Ty, but I know that Ty would probably agree with me on some of the data aspect. Start to get into the data and look at where the data is and where it's taking you, and starting from there. That'd be my first best recommendation.
That's awesome. I wonder, Tyler, I know you have an interesting perspective from Safelite. So, Corwin, you had mentioned, looking at these customer insights, looking at these business insights, finding these overlaps and these opportunities. I know, Tyler, you had mentioned sometimes the customers say they want something, but then maybe they don't actually want it, need it, use it. So how do you, really find the right balance between, learning about what a customer says versus what they actually need?
Yeah, that really comes down to different types of research. So, we do usability research, a lot of one-on-one conversations around using prototypes to understand what they want, what they think they want. Where it usually comes out to a true answer is when we go to A/B testing across the entire population. We learn real quick that they like the idea of a certain knowing something or certain imagery, but in production, it doesn't come to fruition. So, there is a level of people. Another thing that we do is we sometimes once a year grab a bunch of people in the UX space or in the research space, and we have them analyze our website. Not because they are necessarily exactly our customer, but they know enough about what we do to kind of see in between what a customer probably wants or says. And then, we're too close to it, obviously, because we look at this stuff every day. So it's not only customers, but sometimes taking experts in a certain space and letting them rip your site apart and find the holes and help you patch some things up.
It's all about perspective, right? And getting that outside opinion. So, speaking about customers and about getting their data and having that inform the product, there's all of this different type of data that you can collect. But given all of that, Tyler, I'm curious, how do you keep your core audience at the heart of what you do and continue to build empathy and understanding for that user through data to inform your product?
The answer to that will get me in trouble is keep senior management as far away from the website as possible. I think in a lot of places, senior management thinks they understand the customer or they think they are the customer. They often are not. And I've unfortunately gotten to a point where I'm almost at that level of where I need to stay out of my designer's way and let them run. But a lot of it, again, it's research. The biggest thing I've learned through the years is everyone knows, yeah, you should do usability, you should do A/B testing. There's tools in between like feedback loop, maze that can kind of do these in between of in-person and then raw A/B testing. But most people don't actually do it, or they do it rarely. And so it's just one of those things where you have to kind of pull the Band-Aid off. You have to make the investment. Safelite, I'm very fortunate. Safelite gives us 7 figures every year to go and just do A/B testing. That's outside of just the other stuff that you need to be done on a website. That is our strict A/B testing budget. And it's because they've through the years, they've trusted the team, and our ROIs are usually 10 to 15x that to return the investment and run and do what's best for the customer. So I think one thing is, actually doing the work and then, convincing management to give you the money to do it, because it's not cheap to do it at a high rate.
Yeah, speaking of data maturity, we have a further area we want to dig into that, talking about how you start to grow that within the organization. But first, just realizing we're a good 20 minutes into the session, and I want to keep you guys all into it and awake. What questions do some of you who are on here have for our guests? What wonderments do you have in mind when thinking about data and how it informs product and informs decisions at your organization? Anyone have any challenges with that, or is it always easy?
I guess a question of mine is like, it revolves around how do you contextualize data and how do you use data like as a context? Because I think, you know, often when you think about huge amounts of information and statistics, you can really use that to like confirm an existing narrative or an existing bias. But sometimes it's hard to let it speak for itself. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are there.
So I think that there was this great quote that I heard there that I read the other day. I apologize, I'm not gonna be able to attribute it, but it basically was along the lines of, when you're looking for a needle in a haystack, sometimes adding more hay to the stack doesn't make it any easier to find that needle. And so I think if you can really frame your problem toward an analytical perspective, that's really what's going to help you be able to better understand and differentiate what kind of data you may or may not need. More data isn't always better for a solution, but getting the right data is the right thing. And I think the types of questions that I think from a qualitative, quantitative perspective, everybody's asking is, who's going to be interacting with us? When are they going to interact with us? What are they going to be interacting with us about? Those are the very same questions I'm asking our data science folks to answer when it comes to looking at the data. So if I can frame that problem appropriately and take that business issue and put it into that analytical mindset where I'm trying to answer those questions. So if I can answer those questions, what data do I need to be able to answer those questions? That better helps me inform it. And just because I might have access to all the world's best data doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to get there. So I try to contextualize it in those kind of terms.
Kai, can I ask you, can you say a few words about what you mean by contextualize?
Yeah, I think, you know, basically, like a lot of what we do with data is to use it to understand a story, to tell a story, right? And I guess a lot of the question is, you know, how do you find the story to tell, and you know, what role does data play in that?
Thank you. Now I'm going to think some more.
I have a question, Lacey. This is Molly. Hello. One of the questions, hey Ty. One of the questions I have, I'm just starting to kind of think about this whole notion of how do you, when you roll out products or just even analysis that could potentially change business processes or business rules for that matter, is, you know, how do you bring in the right people? So how do you bring in your data engineering folks? I just went to a Women in Analytics luncheon, Zoom luncheon yesterday around engineering, and they're saying, okay, bring them in at the beginning. And I just started thinking about, you know, how do I get my UX folks involved in, you know, whether it's a dashboard or a model or what have you for rollout. But, you know, the thing of it is, you know, where I work, we have very few data engineers and even fewer UX folks. And so, you know, they're knee deep in, you know, website design and what have you. So how do you bring them in the right ways when you know that their time is you know, everybody wants their time because there's only one or two of them. And, you know, what point in the process, and, you know, I'm kind of, it's open for me, it's open-ended, like, where do I bring them in so as not to offend my developers who are maybe designing something or my data scientists. So it's like, it's a team. So it's timing and how do I bring them in and how do I make the best use of their time in these projects?
I love that, Molly. And I would love to speak on that from my perspective, but I know Ty, because we've worked together before, you might be able to share extra context on this. So we're big believers in T-shaped individuals and specialists throughout projects. And by that, I mean, it's really easy, especially when your teams are busy, to start to get into a siloing effect where exactly what you were just talking about happens. Hey, the UXers are so busy, or the data people are so busy. They're really not absolutely essential until this point in the project. So we just will let them be and work on their other things until then. And then we'll bring them in to do what they do best, and then we'll move on to the next. I think that has a lot of inherent risks. In my past experiences, seeing work performed that way, while it could be efficient and from a time-saving perspective, just people miss the context of not being involved in the process throughout, and they might have guided decisions differently, even if it wasn't a part that they were leading. And so wherever the opportunity lies to bring in those people to be part of the process end to end for a product, even if they're not leading that piece, but they're there as an advisor, we found that that's really important. It is becoming harder as, lucky for everybody on this call, as UXers, as data people, what we do is becoming more and more valued as product mindset maturity grows in our region. But the hard part is then you become a little overworked, right? It's like, oh, that person's so great for all these things, so let's put them on these 12 projects, which makes it much harder to be involved end to end and to really oversee a project. But man, if we wouldn't have had Ty's thoughts on data and some of the dashboards and platforms we were building with him in the past early on, we would have probably made some riskier decisions. But by having that advice and advisement early on in the discovery phase of starting to plan for a product, it was super helpful.
Yeah, I'll jump in and comment there. I agree completely, Lacey. I like how you describe it with the T-shaped individuals. I think when to get engineers involved, it's a dangerous question, right? Because I'm sure we've all been part of projects where, this is understandable, but engineers can quickly sink a conversation, right? By getting into technical details, legal compliance, right? Things like that. And so I think you have to be really careful with the individuals who you bring in, right? Given their experiences and where their energy is, where their expertise is. Into the process. I'm a huge advocate that you should start from the very beginning with somebody that can think from that perspective as part of a minimal group that represents the users, which is usually a designer, data and machine learning, which is usually somebody like a data scientist or engineer, and then the business, right? I think that's the minimal group that you have to start with. I think if you want to build, data-oriented products, data or machine learning oriented products, you have to have engineers involved from the beginning. But to Lacey's point, it has to be that T-shaped person that really has energy around the whole of the design process, right? And can focus early on getting to a clear vision for what do we want to produce here, iterating through the process of moving through user and technology and data and business. Right, moving around to determine, okay, what's the minimal compelling deliverable that we can produce here? Start with that, at the design level, and only then begin to think about, okay, what does this look like from a UX perspective? What does this look like from a data and machine learning perspective? What's this going to look like from a business model perspective? So when you're bringing them in, make sure they're going to be able to pause all technical stuff for a bit, use the perspective that they have to inform the design of that initial most compelling chunk of work.
Great. I'm gonna shift us back into some other questions. Tyler, I think as the conversation was starting to evolve there, we started to think about, how does an organization structure properly? How do we build teams and processes in a way that's going to be helpful and kind of take the most advantage of data? Could you talk to us a little bit about kind of data maturity and what that looks like within an organization?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things in an organization, well, the two biggest things is one is having like a center of one source of truth, a single repository. I've been in several companies where data's in a couple places, and that gets messy real quick. Another one would be a data dictionary for the company. I'll give you an example at Safelite. A job complete to the field means the technician put the glass in. To finance, that's when has it been invoiced? So when you have these different groups trying to understand when a job is complete, if they're looking at data, and you call it something, it's all like Lacey said earlier, it's all perception or where you sit in the business and how you look at something and go, this is what it means to me, which it might not what it means to somebody else. So those are, I think, the two big things that we really like. In everything I do, as few gatekeepers as possible makes life a lot easier. There's got to be standards and structures in place, but sometimes you have to let different groups, when they're trying to solve important business questions, be able to get into the data. You know, the data is in a safe, secure place, but if digital needs to get in for some reason, or the field needs to, or finance needs to get in there to understand something, you can't have a bunch of gates in the way. So it's gonna there's got to be a level of freedom, I think, for different departments to be able to go through that. In tools, I think everyone using the same tools we've learned is important. When different groups use different tools, sometimes they get different answers to the same question, which it probably in itself makes Ty and Corwin just their heads explode at the thought of that. But those are some of the things that we've learned to kind of iron it out and kind of a mature data practice within Safelite.
On that note, Tyler, on like different data sets or sources giving you different answers to the same question, I'm curious for everybody, but Corwin, I'm going to direct this one to you. How at Nationwide have you seen directions, decisions, or roadmaps change based on what you've discovered in data? How's it actually informing and guiding that product?
That's a great question, and it kind of feeds off a question I was hoping you'd tee up for later. That I wanted to push back on Ty for just a moment to hear him answer. But along those lines, so keep in mind, I'm going to try to stitch all of that together too. So one of the things that I've seen is, I'll give an example. We were working on an effort for our call center operations area. And one of the things that we need to work on, obviously, and I think a lot of companies face the same challenge, is how can we start to mitigate calls and drive people to self-servicing capabilities rather than take that very expensive phone call, right? It's not to say that we don't want to interact with our members, but that there might be an easier, more efficient way for everybody and a better experience for everybody. And so when we got into this experience, we had the problem, the business issue, focused on this particular forms aspect. But as we started to tear into the data, and we had UX involved, we had digital involved, we had marketing involved, IT was obviously involved, everybody was involved, and we're all focused on this forms issue. And as we got into it, we started to take a look at the data. What we really found out was there wasn't a forms issue. They were getting stumped on resetting their passwords. So here we had engaged a massive group of people to tackle a problem that wasn't really even a problem. It was the ultimate end goal. And what was driving the initial massive collection of people was the call wrap data, the call logs data kept saying, couldn't do the forms on the website, which is true, they couldn't. But it was because they couldn't get past the password issue. And so once we used the data to better uncover what the actual symptom was, or excuse me, the actual illness was, we were able to not treat symptoms, we were actually able to cure the illness. And that's what we then turned and focused that massive group of people on. And it did reduce calls significantly in that particular topic. And everybody came out a winner on that one. The data science folks came out on the prediction. The data folks came out for saving the day. The digital people came out looking like superstars because they were able to mitigate and head off those calls to the call center, and the call center was able to reduce their operational costs. So it really worked out well for everybody. Of course, I'll take credit for all of it, but it was everybody else who did it.
That's great.
I know that you said that there's a little bit of dialogue there you wanted to have with Ty, though. So before I jump into the next question.
I'll try to give you a heads up, Ty. I didn't want to blindside you, but I really liked what you said a moment ago around the MVP and keeping people focused on what's that kind of, we call it like V1, right? Like if we can be better than a coin flip the first time out with V1, then that's better than where we are today, and we'll continue to improve on that. And I liked your idea and your concept around taking a pause and making sure we're getting those data engineers to not dive deep before they kind of better understand some of the breadth. The question I wanted to ask you was, as analysts, data science, data professionals, we'll analyze something to death. Like if we don't get a push, we'll stay and analyze things forever. How have you balanced out that pause and that push?
Yeah, I think, I think what I found is really valuable is to have a really good representative for the users and for the business, right? Because they are going to be your forcing functions. The users have needs, they have pain that you can resolve. And I think when you have a good representative for the users, you feel that very quickly. And same thing on the business side. They see opportunity and they have goals they're trying to hit, right? And as a member of the business, at least indirectly, you have those same goals. And so you feel the I guess you could call it opportunity or pain, the inverse of opportunity from them. And for me, it's wanting to please the people that I'm working with, right? And in doing so, of course, then serve the users in the business. That gets me really excited to move quickly and be sure not to overanalyze, right? Be sure to focus on, hey, if it hasn't been pushed out and if it's not creating value for both the user and the business, then it does not matter. And so until we push out that first chunk of work, everything's irrelevant. So that's kind of what I use to stay focused and not go too deep.
Ty, that's great. I think, Corwin and Tyler, you both have kind of spoke to, usability testing, getting data that then starts to influence how the roadmap's going to change because what you thought you knew, you found out was maybe different. When we think about, Ty, this question's for you. When we think about the future, predictive outcomes and mapping behaviors of the future, can you tell us a little bit more about opportunities for predictive modeling and maybe where that could take us?
Sure. Yeah. And, just one high level sort of reaction before I respond directly. So, predictive modeling is great. I mean, a prediction assumes though a fixed output, right? We're trying to predict something that we have to determine in advance. And then usually, we think of what predicts that as more variable and perhaps dynamic. But I think, we used to talk a lot more about predictive modeling and not as much about machine learning. And now, of course, the two are highly related. Predictive modeling is a subset of machine learning. But I think as we've moved more into sort of the machine learning AI realm, part of what is implied by the switch from, the words predictive modeling into machine learning is that we really want this to be more dynamics on both sides of the equation, right? That what we're predicting will actually be itself a function of modeling, which itself is a function of what users need. And so I don't know, I use the example of Google at the outset of the call. I think, they said a few years ago, we're going to become a machine learning driven company, right? They moved entirely to that model. And I like how when you use their products, you feel it from them. And I like how they move beyond using predictive modeling where you assume a fixed product or a fixed user experience. And then you try to predict the user's next action to actually embedding it all the way at the front end of the product to say, how can we develop this product so that it's dynamic from the very beginning? And let me make this concrete real quick, because this is very abstract. So I use YouTube to listen to music. This was a long time ago. All my friends thought I was crazy. They were like, why aren't you using Spotify or Pandora or something? But I just really liked it on YouTube. I could find everything quickly and kind of build my own playlist from the beginning. And so anyway, I was using YouTube for music, and this was like 5 years ago. And then, and this was before they had YouTube Music. And then all of a sudden they came out with this new product called YouTube Music. And they said, hey, we can tell you're listening to music on YouTube. Why don't you come check this thing out? And so of course I did. And when I arrived at YouTube Music for the first time, of course they had data to predict what artist I might like from my experiences on YouTube, which was great. So they presented, I showed up, there was a screen with 12 artists on it, just, pictures of them. And they said, tell us, who are your favorite among these, right? And so I really like that because they brought predictive modeling in to set up that initial user experience with that initial screen. But then they didn't assume that anything was fixed, right? Then they took additional input from me to change and improve, right, their predictions about what I'm going to listen to most and what songs to serve up. And I love how that's an example of one, using kind of traditional predictive modeling, set data that we know exists in a database, but then they move it into let's integrate machine learning into the user experience. One, to actually design the experience and make it personalized from the very outset. And two, to create a situation where we can now complement what we already have in our database to improve the predictions or perhaps even what we're trying to predict, right? So hopefully that helps to make it a bit more concrete.
What I love about that is thinking about like, why are you using it in a way that's actually beneficial to the user, right? Because I think, I know for some of our partners and clients, sometimes it's a falling into the trap of, oh, well, this could be so cool if, and it's like, well, is it cool if we do that? Or is it actually valuable to the user? Corwin, when we met for this call a week or so ago, you shared a really interesting story to me within the nationwide space around blood draws and how you are using predictive analytics to improve that experience and really make it better for people. Could you share some more about that? I thought that was a great.
Sure. So I'm not sure if anybody has life insurance, but we have a wholesaling model. So our model is we work with advisors who then sell our product to everyday people and that sort of thing. So when you look at life insurance, the agent has to sell you on the policy to begin with. And then you fill out the application goes to underwriting, and then they send out a medical individual to take a blood draw, and then we get some more information, and it goes back to underwriting. And this can take up to a month, at which point we finally give you a price. And the advisor has to then go out and essentially sell you the policy a second time. They got you signed up and excited about it once, but then you had to wait forever and get stuck with a needle. And then they have to come back and say, hey, sorry about all that, but here's the price, and I can finally tell you the price, and do you want to sign up? And so what we were able to do is take a look at a variety of different data elements and start to make a prediction as to whether or not this person even needed to go through that biometric screening, the blood draw. And in so doing, what that allows us to do is forego that entirely. If we can be accurate with that prediction using the right data against the right situation and circumstances, we can make that prediction. It makes a better experience for the end purchaser, for sure, because who wants to be stuck with needles and have to coordinate that whole scenario. It's better for the advisor who's selling our product because they only have to sell it once. And then it's better for us because it's less costly because we don't have to pay for all the biometric screenings. It's more efficient. We can get that policy in the door sooner. And that's something that we've done over the past 3 or 4 years. We're kind of first in the industry for that. And as a result, we've been able to have a variety of benefits, the significant cost decrease because we're eliminating unnecessary steps, as well as better experiences for the members, the advisors, and ourselves. And as a result, just as a side note, we've only had one claim over those 4 years for any of the policies against which we ran that model, which is phenomenal considering the thousands of people that we've run it against. So when you think about it, that's a really good model that's given us the right kind of information. But it was one where we took a qualitative perspective of, we kind of started with the question of who wants to get stuck with the needle, and everybody said no. So what data do we need to go out and solve the problem of let's not get stuck with needles? And so that's kind of how we held true to that.
Love that. Yeah, and scheduling a random lady to come to your house at some odd hour, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, especially this past year. You don't want any randos at your house any time recently, for sure.
Well, I see some great questions in the chat. Andrew, do you want to facilitate this next round as we're coming close to the top of the hour?
Yeah, hey, John Larson, you had a really good question about organizations and product mindsets. Do you want to ask the group? Just turn off your mute and jump in.
Sure. I work at a relatively small scale organization. We have a very small IT team. I am the data person, and we're having discussions with a consultancy about building a data warehouse. So I know there was some discussion about, you get big enough and then you start putting all your data in the same place. But can you talk through the evolution of an organization when it is changing into a product mindset?
So I'm trying to give somebody else a chance to talk as well, but I'll jump in. I mean, I think the answer to this question for me is if you have more than one person working in a company, you better have a product mindset. I think, at the end of the day, we're all creating products. We all have users, we all have stakeholders. And if we're in this space, we're using data and machine learning type stuff to do it. And so I think the product mindset, and all the things that go along with it, understanding how to keep things lean, how to keep things dynamic with things like Agile, using design thinking along the way, being sure that you always have, the user at the heart of what you're doing, but also alongside of the business. I mean, these things for me are essential. And I would say any company today that's using digital should be, well-versed on using the product-based mindset to approach any work that they're doing.
Big advocates of that. We're right with you. Well, I saw another good question in chat. I want to make sure we have time for David. You had shared, I'll let you ask it, but the premise and why I liked it is a lot of times we realize as UXers that the problem we think we're solving isn't actually the problem. It's a symptom of something deeper. And so you asked a great question about chains of problems, if you'd like to direct that.
Sure. So yeah, I guess this is sort of prompted by Corwin's story and the idea that you think you're looking for a problem here, but it turns out and maybe that really is a problem, right? But it may not have a simple cause, right? A lot of us are blessed with systems with lots of interconnections, right? And we may have a problem here that's caused way upstream. Any tips for ferreting that stuff out?
Yeah, one of the things I'd mention is Nationwide subscribes to a methodology called CRISP-DM, which stands for Cross-Industry Standard Practice of Data Management, which is why they made it an acronym, because that's a mouthful. But one of the first parts of that process, that methodology, is largely business understanding. And if I like what Ty said earlier about taking the pause before you go too technical, and especially even with your data folks or your more technical side of things, if you can take that pause and truly understand your business partners, what the pain is, what's causing the pain, what the process is, it's certainly going to put you in a better position when you do get into the technical and you do get into the data to understand what actually is causing things, what's a symptom and what's a root cause, right? And you're going to have a more opportunity to be able to identify those kinds of things. So I can't stress business understanding enough. And I think a lot of times, especially in my space, people jump to a solution. They're like, hey, I've got the greatest solution. Now go find me a problem. So if we can take a better understanding of that business side of things before we get into some of the technical, it better sets the stage for every conversation that you're going to have, whether you're the business guy, the data science guy, what have you.
That's great. Matt Rumor, you had a question in here, and I'd actually like to direct this one to Tyler. So Matt, if you want to ask it, but Tyler has a good perspective on this, I think. Awesome.
Yeah. So at where we are at Ascend, we have some really awesome, talented folks from the UX side of the house and data science. And some of the times some of us are very new. We're trying to figure out how to work together at times, understand where people are coming from, just from an empathy perspective. So if you were to give a UXer any advice in working with a data science team, what would that be? Now on the other side of that coin, if you were to give advice to a data scientist working with a UX team, what might that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our data and analytics team works closely with our UX team because they both kind of have skin in the game when it comes to websites and design and all that. So we bring them in, and if we're going to run either build a site from the beginning or even our ongoing A/B testing, UX and data get together and they talk about what do they want to measure, what do they want to see. And so they both have kind of a say on the output of what they're going to get. And data, and so it's not like we just run a test and data's like, I wish I would have known this or this, or when data has, like we've talked about, has a different perspective on stuff. So sometimes they can look at a design and go, hey, have you thought about this? We've seen something else in another part of the business. So I think when they just work together and they're just working towards a common goal, and they both feel like they have something that, something in the product that's being put out, And the teams just have naturally kind of grown together. Our analytics and UX group work very closely. And they're to the point now where, if there's a meeting and the other one's not in there for some reason, they're like, we can't move until we talk to data, or hey, we need to pull UX in. And so you kind of just grow that as they have both have some sort of ownage in the product that's being spit out.
That's such good stuff. Well, I know we are running up close on time, and I want to make sure we have time to connect with each other in small groups. And there are some other good questions coming through in chat. So let's maybe take those into those breakout rooms. We're going to post up a Zoom poll right now. So as the wonderful Stephanie Lopez puts that up, if you all could give us your feedback really quickly, just a few questions. We appreciate it.
Looks like we have a few more people to finish it up.
Awesome. As the rest of you are finishing up that poll, thank you so much for your insights on that. I am going to send that email form one more time in the chat. So if you'd be interested in future content or updates around products for people, please share your email address and we'll make sure it gets to you. Again, also would encourage connecting with our guests and our speakers on LinkedIn and with those in your breakout rooms. We are about to move into rooms of 4 to 5 people. Let's tee up maybe a little prompt for discussion. That way, in case anybody's an introvert and doesn't really know what to say to each other.
Yeah, I mean, if you have something you want to talk about, feel free to fire away, but maybe a prompt for everybody to consider is, how's your organization using data to make decisions? So based on some of the conversations we've had, and then what role does data have in the decision making at your organization? So maybe share that. We'll pull you guys back into this group. So we'll send a timer once we get close to the hour. We'll send a little countdown warning to say we're going to come out of those breakout rooms, and then we'll do a quick sign off. So, all righty.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks.
Breakout rooms are open.
Morgan, you got cut off there.
Want to hear what you had to say, Ty?
Oh man, I'll throw it in the chat. I'll throw it in the chat.
Sorry, guys. This is always so awkward, but that's just even more incentive for people to connect offline, I hope, and make some new friendships. Yeah, just in case anybody has to jump right at 9, we're at the top of the hour. Super thankful to our speakers today and for all of our guests. You're the best. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.